There definitely is an African culture and an African identity. And the difficulty people have with coming to terms with that is that they feel that an African identity must necessarily displace all variables of identity, but it does not exist. You can actually have different variables of identity in place. So people can belong to a nation, even a sub-nation, and also belong to a continent and the globe. And that's the way I see myself. I'm an African, I'm a Ghanaian, I am a member of the globe, so wherever I find myself as part of that community. I like the example of the World Cup because I think it is the most commonplace illustration of the fact that there is a certain African identity. And those who follow the World Cup always know when you have an African team make it to the quarterfinals or beyond, the entire African continent marshals its support and its enthusiasm, and it's infectious. When the World Cup was held in South Africa and Ghana made it to the quarterfinals, I was actually at the time just moving to Kenya. The energy and enthusiasm of the Kenyan people behind the Ghanaian team was more than mine. And in fact, when that penalty was missed, the heartbreak in Kenya was more than I felt or that my friends felt. And I think that's an example of some of the things that bind us together. I don't think I understand all the reasons why they are successful, but what I can say is that they genuinely pay more attention into trying to understand the communities that they are creating work for. And they don't look at things from just their own narrow lens. So they learn more about the society and in that are able to build patterns and therefore be able to execute. It's not something new, I like to always add, because many people think that this creative explosion that we're seeing in places like Nigeria and South Africa is new. It isn't. If you look at Yaw Nsarkoh's work, his biography, Still Grazing, he talks about working with Fela Kuti and the others. If you go back to the Wale showing cars and the Achebes before, you will see that there was a community of African writers, Sembeni Usman and so on and so forth. So it is not at all new. But I think genuinely what people have in common in that regard is that they are people who tend to understand and to spend more time in places where people just like them are not necessarily always. So they are curious about the world around them and they are able to harness it and do something with it creatively. Unilever's approach, and definitely what I am trying extremely hard to encourage, is that genuinely you will see that corporates will tend to have large communities of middle-class people from similar backgrounds. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's okay. You want the best educated people who can come in and understand the analytical tools and so on. But what you need to be careful of is that they do not become comfortable with only their own and define society only as their society. They need to be curious about the world, and even where they are uncomfortable, dare to go, because that's where they renew their creativity and deepen their engagement and their insight. So when you talk about Close Up, for example, which is a youth brand, we should not have people come into an organization and think that their memory of their youth is what the youth is today. They need to spend time with the youth, and not only the youth that qualify to be in the middle class, but the youth at the top of the pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid, in rural areas, etc. Make sure that they have understood, and it is from there that they must fashion their brand strategies. Not all things will always be different in the African continent. We talked about football, for example. That's a big platform. That is big in many places. So there will be certain things that will be devised for some markets, and then you will find that it has traction and it can go much further. One of that is things like Close Up Naija, which is built very much on a Nigerian entertainment culture, the vibrancy of the youth and so on, which has now escaped Nigeria because of the enthusiastic following that you have on the African continent of Nigerian music, etc. So you must also be keen to see where things that are done for one market, do they have relevance and applicability in other places? And that's the example that I gave of Close Up Naija and the interest that the Kenyan community has in it in Unilever. And I'm sure Having seen the Nigerian entertainment industry and its influence in many parts of the African continent, even in Mozambique, where they don't speak English, where they speak Portuguese, I have seen Nigerian music resonate in nightclubs and reverberate. So the marketeers must do something with it.